everybody.
Welcome to this week's edition of Beer with a Broker. I'm Joe Pepper, broker, Delicious Real Estate.
I'm Matt Ward, agent at Delicious Real Estate, special agent, Agent Ward from the Shield.
And we're at Barley's, not Barley's,
Formerly
Barley's. This is Smokehouse Brewing. I always have to spit it out. Smokehouse Brewing on 33 in Granby.
Yes, we're kind of it's a little bit almost remote Grandview, if that's possible. So 33 gets like the Dublin Road kind of not very walkable over here.
It's not very walkable. You've probably been here and had delicious barbecue and delicious beer. It's a great place.
I have not been here, so I chose the pineapple beer. Let me say the name correctly, that way I'm not butchering this here. Let's see. I have the pineapple IPA, which seemed interesting to me because pineapple and the bitterness of an IPA seem kind of contradictory to each other. So I'm going to see what this tastes like. I haven't tasted it yet. You get so eager, you are always into your beer before we even start. I usually judge how long we're supposed to do this based on how long it takes me to drink a beer, which is typically 30 to 45 minutes.
Only because you're talking so much and intently listening. And?
That's delicious.
Really?
Like the sweetness offsets, like I've been kind of over the hoppy thing for some time. But even when you get
I saw a headline that said, IPAs are your dad's craft beer.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. You're also your dad's craft beer lover.
I totally am. I am your dad.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to be within some point, somebody will be like, dude, Budweiser's where it's at. You'll try it. You'll try it again just to see if it was really okay.
That was my dad's beer.
My dad's was...
Actually, I've only seen my dad drink one beer in my whole life. Out of like a fish fry or something. And it wasn't Budweiser.
My dad drank Miller Lite and occasionally Lowenbrow when he was,
Lowenbrow.
Yeah, when he would get well paid.
The champagne of beers.
No,
is that what it was?
No, that Lowenbrow is like, I don't even remember. You don't even hear about it anymore.
I don't think
champagne of beers, of course, is Miller High Life. But
is that like a tagline?
Yeah, that's absolutely their tagline. Joe was unaware that Miller High Life was the champagne of beers.
I really thought it was the one.
Champagne. We are here today. We're going to talk about some real estate, non-beer related things. And then we're going to talk about Joe's upcoming vacation, where he's going to be...
Even realtors get vacations.
It's going to be like the Robin Williams movie RV.
Or the Chevy Chase movie Vacation.
Oh, that would be even better. Are you taking a dog with you?
No, we're not. We did last weekend. We went to Lake Michigan. And it worked out okay.
Yeah,
she'd never been more than 10 miles away from our house in a car. So we didn't know how she'd be in a 5-hour trip.
Oh my gosh.
Great.
I have a somewhat new dog, so I can't even imagine trying to take my dog on an extended trip.
Speaking of lakes, I had a conversation this morning when I was getting my haircut. How about the haircut? Did you even notice?
Did we both get our haircut on the same day?
Did you get your haircut today?
Yeah.
Damn.
Gosh.
Shout out to the guys at Old Familiar Barbershop.
Yeah, I go to the Noble Baron in New Albany.
We had a conversation about buying homes on lakes. And when I was younger, my kids were small. I always wanted to buy a lake house, but I wanted it to be on a small lake. I wanted to be like a 10 horsepower limit type lake, not a huge lake like Buckeye Lake or Indian Lake, because I'm just not a big fan of that lake culture sort of thing. I kind of wanted something sleepy and foresty.
Oh, you're meaning like too busy, too party, too...
Yeah, too party, mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys out there in jet ski.
Too many people falling off the dock and almost getting hit by a boat.
Right. And there was a time when we came across something on Lake Logan that was perfect. And we had talked about going in on it with family members, and it was going to be a thing, and it just never happened. And now my kids are too old. I'm saving my money for other things.
Because you don't want to retire to a lake, you want to retire to somewhere else.
Yeah, like the ocean.
The ocean.
I moved from a lake to an ocean.
Yeah.
And I don't care about the horsepower limits on the Caribbean.
Oh, you're going to move to that type of ocean?
Yeah.
Get out of this country. we were going to start off today, besides our vacation speak, talking about how lending when it comes to real estate is changing. Obviously with crash in 2006, 2008, a lot of new legislation was put into place that required a lot more of lenders.
Which required a lot more of you.
Yes, absolutely. Truth in lending and several aspects of that which required not only just everything to be disclosed, but also additional hoops to jump through for buyers. So,
with the end result, making it harder to get a mortgage.
Yes, making it harder, with the idea being that it was more properly vetting people so that they wouldn't end up in a mortgage that they couldn't afford, which I'm all about.
Absolutely.
But now it's starting to change a little bit. We're starting to see some things change. As of July 1st, the new credit rating standards are no longer going to consider medical debt or judgment debt as going against you for your credit score. So any of that is hitting your credit report after July 1st will not be negatively affecting you.
That's not retroactive?
I don't know if it is or not. I don't think it is. I think it's one of those things where you still have to go back.
So it doesn't really open up a whole new volume of home buyers. It just helps.
And that's
the future home buyers not.
That's kind of my argument with it. It's not really going to help anybody that's been deep in the process as much as it's going to help people that are brand new to the process. But what we'll do is I'll research that a little bit more thoroughly, and I'll add a link in the comments that tells you a little bit more exactly about if it's retroactive or if it's specifically, because I don't want to give any false information here. But that is happening. In addition to that, there was another big item that came on related to mortgages.
We talked about student loan debt.
Student loan debt has changed. It still hasn't hit the primary underwriting software, desktop underwriter, primarily, which basically this is what it is. If you owe a student loan and you're paying a regular amount on your student loan, nothing's going to change for you. All of that regular payment's going to go against your debt to income ratio on a regular basis. If you have a graduated repayment plan or a reduced payment plan, that's where the new rules that Fannie and Freddie put into place are going to positively affect you. So essentially what had happened before is it was a minimum of 1% of your overall loan debt is what Fannie and Freddie would consider as your monthly obligation for your payment. So even if you had a repayment plan of $45 a month, but your 1% was $350, they would consider the $350 of debt per month instead of the $45. And that's changing. So now that if you have a repayment plan put into place or some type of deferment, they're not going to consider the 1%. They're going to consider whatever it is. If it's $45 a month, that's what's going to go against your debt to income ratio. And how that's going to be beneficial is that it's going to allow people to be able to buy more of a house, because that debt to income ratio can extremely limit what you're eligible for, or even completely make you ineligible to get a standard loan, FHA, conventional, anything.
And those were all sort of congressional type moves. I mean, these are nationwide. It's not really coming from Freddie or Fannie, but this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think this is another step of deregulation.
Right. So, bottom line, lending is loosening up a little bit. I even heard something about a no documentation loan business.
I heard about that for businesses. No stated income for businesses.
Right.
But, of course, anytime you get into that type of...
it's about as loose as it gets.
That's loose.
And there's
some people would
that.
begin to say that would be back into subprime lending. And honestly, I say this, it's subprime when the interest rate is horrible. That's when you're really dealing with subprime. You can say whatever you want about whether the person is able to pay it or not, but when they're paying, we've got interest rates right now at under 4%, and if they're paying 6% on interest rate because they signed a document or whatever, then that's a subprime loan.
So let me tell you about my beer.
Okay. What did you choose today? I got the pineapple IPA.
One thing I like about Smokehouse is that they have cask conditioned beers. So something a little bit out of the ordinary. This means it's not pasteurized, it's not filtered, there's no carbonation in it. It's conditioned in the cask. And this I think is called Droxy. It is a German Kolsch style beer, which I normally am not a big fan of, but I thought I'd go out on a limb and try it. And I really like it.
I like the Kolsch beers. It's kind of like when you're talking about, like, this is literally not your dad's craft beer.
Well, right, yeah. I mean, Kolsch's are just, I don't like them because they're always just so light.
Yeah.
They're so kind of almost throwaway in my book.
Kind of like a Pilsner.
Yeah. I mean, okay, Kolsch. But I really like this one. Droxy. It's good. Just try it.
I love how snobby he is about his beers. I don't have as much experience with these beers as he does. I sound like I'm beyond like the dad's microbrew. I'm like haven't even got to dad's microbrew stage. I'm like drinking a Sammy Smith's oatmeal stout in the parking lot to a fish show kind of beer drinker. That's like where I don't have time to buy food from the vendors, so I just get liquid sustenance.
Right.
That's me.
No veggie burrito for you.
Yeah, clearly I'm talking too much, so.
And I don't like fruity beers. I don't think I would ever get a pineapple.
The other thing that has changed is they're now offering to take your student loan debt and roll it into your mortgage. And I'm not a big fan. I have no idea why you would do that, because with a student loan, here's why you might want to do that. This is what I heard discussed on a couple different podcasts. As a financial move, to remove yourself from liability of being tied to that student loan debt forever, because you can't get out of a student loan debt even when you file bankruptcy. You still have that student loan debt that you're obligated to, but you can absolutely foreclose.
So that's the upside. You could foreclose on your house.
Well, you
would be forgiving your student
loans.
There
are people that would use that as a strategy, that would foreclose and the student loan would be gone, and they would end up paying a tiny portion of what they owed on the student loan and the mortgage, lose the house, but...
And what if they had $150,000 student loan debt because they were a doctor, and then they turn around and get 100% mortgage because of a doctor?
Yeah, so you're talking about...
I mean, that could never happen.
You're talking about...
They foreclosed.
Let's just run basic numbers on that. Say it was $150,000 student loan debt, and say they chose a $300,000 house. So they now owe $450,000 on a house that's valued at roughly $300,000. How many years are we talking about that would take just to get back to zero? What, 10 years?
Many years, yes.
Yeah, 10 years more to get back to zero. And I can't even understand why anybody, because especially now, no one's really thinking about living in a home for 30 years anymore.
No.
Like, people are talking about living in a home for 7 or 8 years right off the jump.
Right. That's about the national average.
So that means you're literally going to sell this house in 7 or 8 years for minus whatever the student loan debt is and whatever tiny appreciation and all the fees of selling the house. So you would be back to paying the student loan again.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, you'd be back to getting another mortgage or just having to owe at the closing your student loan debt. But in the event, obviously my problem with it is in the event that something came up and you lost your income stream and you did have to sell that house, you're trapped in that house.
Right.
Unless you can come up with the cash to pay your student loan cash. I can tell you right now,
no one
30% was a high number on how many people were paying with cash in real estate in Columbus, but nobody's paying their student loan debt in cash ever at all.
No.
It's just not happening. Maybe an inheritance.
Well,
but
I'll tell you though, a lot of that cash that is coming into the Columbus real estate market is from parents.
Parents or people that are from the other areas.
Parents are buying houses. I wonder if they are paying off student loan debt, because it's really not 6 of one, half dozen the other, right? I mean, you'd rather have a house if you're someone's kid who has
student loan debt's gonna.
Student loan. No one cares about student loan debt as far as your credit score goes. It's the best kind of debt you can have. But it's still around your neck. I wonder, would parents pay off student loans before they help you buy a house with the same amount of money?
It seems like it might be a more wise choice.
You can pay off your student loans with low monthly payments that you've already arranged, but you can't necessarily buy a house. So that's why houses are.
White House is always going to win in the debt acquisition world. This week things have slowed down a little bit because of vacations and other things in life. I think people are starting to really look into, I guess, maybe prepare for school starting up again.
In a way, yeah. I think July 4th every summer is just sort of a line in the sand that things are going to start slowing down. And I'm seeing things all over town that are beginning to be on the market longer. Starting to see a lot more price reductions, whereas we haven't seen price reductions. They come on the market and they sell.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see longer days on market, price reductions. But the thing I'm surprised about is that I'm also seeing a reasonable amount of new listings popping up. I thought it would slow down from a new listing standpoint, but I haven't really seen that.
And that's kind of how I felt this summer was going to roll out. I thought there was going to be a lot of people that were nervous about listing because we're not wanting to enter that aggressive seller's market.
Why?
And
because they have to turn around and be a buyer?
yeah, yeah. So they didn't want to become a buyer and have to deal with the same thing that they did. The opposite end of what they dealt with selling their house, multiple offers and whatnot.
I think it's going to bode well for you if you're going to be buying in the fall.
Absolutely.
I think you'll have more homes in the market to choose from, and they might be a little bit lower priced than they were in the spring and summer.
And I also think that right now people are starting to just make the decision as a buyer, I'm just going to go ahead and buckle down to rent again. I'm going to go ahead and sign another lease again. So I think
because of the time of year.
Yeah, because of the time of year, they've already spent all of the spring getting beat up in multi-offer situations, and you know, more than anything, when you first start looking for a house, you can do 2 years of online research. When you start putting your feet in the houses, your vision of what's super important to you, what's not, completely narrows and changes.
Oh, it
so
absolutely
I think
does.
that those buyers that just not only got beat up, but also were learning that whole time, educated themselves
their dream
enough
house
to know.
is shrunk to not quite what they hoped it would be.
Yeah, the 1,800 square feet, 4-bedroom that's now a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,200 square foot place. They're like, I don't want to make that change. I want to wait until things change a little bit or more comes on the market.
Right, but I had this conversation recently. What do you do? So if you wait a year, that $250,000 house is now going to be a $265,000 house next year.
Well, I mean,
so you're buying power unless you really reduce your debt to income ratios. Maybe you pay off some credit cards. It's not as great as it is this year, which makes buying this year seem to me to make more sense.
It just depends on what your overall goals are. Like,
always, yeah.
Like, if you plan on staying in the area for an extended, if you haven't had kids yet, and you're about to have children, and you're planning that, or you just had a new child, and that's why you're buying a house, I think that, buying now probably is fine because you're going to be there for, at least a certain amount of time, because you're going to be there at least up until that child goes to school, if not slightly longer.
Right. Two things on that. Just because you're having a baby doesn't mean you have to move right now. People always do that.
Yeah.
You think, oh my God, I painted the nursery and it looks great, but we got to move out of German Village because we're in Columbus schools. But it's okay, you've got time.
Well, not to mention the fact that there's a plethora of options that didn't exist 10 years ago. When I was still here, there were not the options there were with school choice, there were not the options there were with alternate types of schools and things like that. So, I mean, even when you sent your kids to school, the options were extremely limited, but that was not 20 years ago. 10 years ago? 15 years ago?
15 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe not quite.
Total crap for your dad. So yeah, and it's slowing down, and like we were talking about, people were going on vacations and stuff like that. But also, I think people realize that if they haven't bought by now, they're not going to be able to be in that house before school starts.
Yeah, and
I think
and
that's
in the suburbs, that's a thing for sure.
that people want to be settled. They don't want to be trying to put their
You-
kid
you
in
should
school the
probably
second
be-
week of school.
You should probably be going in contract on a house in your preferred school district in the next 2 weeks, because school starts earlier and earlier, right? I mean, it used to be until Labor
It started
Day.
last week.
So you have about 2 weeks. So you better get going on that.
But that being said, have you seen yourself the compromise process where it moves someone out of a neighborhood that they were originally targeting, really wanted to be into an adjacent neighborhood? Are you seeing that on a consistent basis? Where people that said I wanted to live in German Village are going to Marion Village, or people that said I want to live in Italian Village are choosing Wyland Park or something like that?
Because they can't afford the first choice and the competition's too fierce?
Yes.
Yes. For sure, that happens all over town. Many people, for example, say they want to buy a house in Grandview. You can't buy a house in Grandview. It's impossible. Let me tell you about a story. I had lunch with a guy last week, and this is how he sold his house in Grandview. He had lived in Grandview for years, and his house, of course, had appreciated just fine. So he has his realtor come over to the house and walk through it and give him his opinion of what it could sell for and what he needed to do to the house to sell it. He gets like a handyman guy, comes through the house and says, "Why are you going to do all this stuff? It's Grandview. Your house is just going to sell anyway." And light bulb, sure, yeah. So then he has someone else whose sign he sees all over town come in and take a look at his house. Another realtor, and she tells him, what she thinks that goes out to hundreds of people who are specifically Grandview. Goes out. Next day, he has 5 showings. There's 2 offers.
Is this just him himself?
He and his wife.
So the realtor wasn't involved at all?
It turns out, after having 2 realtors come through and waste their time, no realtors.
Yeah.
But it helped him form his opinion of his price. So it turns out the buyers who saw it on the email blast from the mommy group also didn't have a realtor. So he saves those realtor fees. That's not bad. It's 6% on the Grandview house. Pretty good. And he's in contract within 12 hours. That's Grandview.
So would you say that Upper Arlington's even more achievable than Grandview at this
Oh,
point?
absolutely.
Is it because of the walkability? Like what Grandview has to offer?
Because Grandview's so small, there's only so many houses. The school district's great, and it's even that much closer to downtown. And
So the downtown thing's a big deal.
The downtown thing, I think, helps a lot, especially for commuters, and because of mostly Grandview Avenue. Because there's just so much there now to walk to. Like Arlington doesn't really quite. I mean,
It's kind of spread.
there's some stuff here and there's some stuff there, and walking to that is nice, but it's not quite the
It's
same.
like either Lane Avenue or nothing.
Right, or old downtown.
Yeah.
It's not. But so there's that.
And when it comes to Bexley, where do you see people ending up? Berwick, or where do you see people ending up?
No, if you want Bexley,
Bexley is just Bexley, right? Because of the schools.
You don't compromise because of the schools.
Is
but-
Bexley
but-
still
but-
as fierce
but-
as Grandview in your opinion?
No, not quite. No.
Grandview is that hardcore?
It is, really is. Bexley is a little bit easier.
It sounds to me like
there's
the people
always
that are,
more churn in Bexley than there is in Grandview.
Is it? Do you think that that's because the people that are buying in Grandview are the people that are younger, that are into all that walkable stuff? They want to be close to downtown. They want to have not only the schools, but they also want to be able to go to the Hungry Carrot or whatever, and the
Well,
Hungry Rabbit.
yes,
Sorry, guys. Your food is good. I just forget your name.
I think both have a great sense of community, a great
Sweet
sense
carrot.
of neighborhood, and they're just a little bit different. I think the Grandview people are maybe a little bit more urban, and actually people are maybe a little bit more conservative,
More suburban.
maybe a little bit more suburban, but the walkability to Main Street in Bexley is fantastic. I mean, that's real urban walkability. You live in a great neighborhood, you have great neighbors, you can walk to 3 different pizza places, 4 different ice cream shops, you can walk to a fantastic movie theater. I mean, it's all right there. Lots of restaurants. So there's something that's overlooked about Bexley, I think, is the walkability. And you know what? It's really just about as close to downtown as Granby.
Yeah, it's not very far. It's just on the opposite end.
Yeah. And it's more affordable.
Somebody asked me this the other day, and I didn't really have a true answer for them. But like, what's the difference? What's the difference between urban and suburban in the city of Columbus? Because you have places like Bexley that are kind of a suburb, or at least they were a suburb at one time, and still kind of are. But what is the real difference between an urban part of town and a suburban part of town? Is it just being outside the outer belt?
Well, no, because I call Bexley, Worthington, Grandview, Upper Arlington, first ring suburbs.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they're all inside the outer belt, but they're all their own school district. They're all their own municipality.
Gotcha.
So I guess that's what makes them suburban. Though I totally understand what you're saying about being urban.
Gotcha. So, like a place like Minerva Park, would you still consider that?
They do have their own
suburban because
mayor.
they have their own police force and their own trash pickup and their own.
Well, they don't have their own school district.
No, they have Western.
So I would say.
So it would be
yeah.
suburban, but as Western.
Right.
So the school district is kind of the primary factor in that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what really sets you apart as a municipality.
All right, and finally, let's talk about your vacation. Yeah, we were talking about all these people going on vacation. Joe is also leaving on vacation. We won't tell you when, that way you can't rob his house. But because there's too many public records out there.
Right, we're doing something different this year. We're flying to LA, the family. We're renting a minivan, so that's something different for us. And we're driving up the West Coast, all the way to Vancouver. We're taking about 15 or 16 days to do that.
Are you going to Voodoo Donuts in Portland?
We may.
Do you know what that is?
Someone told me today to go to, is it Ricky's in LA, right outside the airport? So
Is
it's
it
the first
also
thing we're going
donuts?
to do. Donuts, yes.
It's going to be a donut tour.
And they said to go to Pinky's in Hollywood, hot dog place. So, yeah, I if you have suggestions of where to go, LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, put them in the comments.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to be driving up the West Coast, hopefully seeing some whales, other sea life, dolphins, sea lions, sea otters, whatever. Stopping in places like, hopefully, just everywhere.
Sasquatch. I think that's what they call it in the Pacific Northwest.
I believe so.
It's Sasquatch.
We will be on the lookout for Sasquatch.
And I'm not talking about the large beef sticks. Squatch.
So that'll be a fun trip. But I will be doing a lot of real estate on that trip, so just wait till I get back and then call me.
Do you find that yourself still doing real estate every time you travel anywhere, just peeking at like houses for sale and then looking them up on your phone to see how much they cost and stuff like that?
Right, because I have to write it off, right? No, I do that.
You
Because
just screen capture every time you put it in with your.
I do that, and if we're in a city, like I slow down and I stop in front of other brokerages just to see what their layout is, and what it's like in there, and what they're doing, and
Now you're going to the Northwest and the West. You're definitely going to have to see how the hip kids do it.
Yeah, the hip kids, the technological wizards,
Yeah.
what they're doing over there.
California, where their real estate market is always like it is right now in Columbus.
Right. No, I'm looking forward to that trip. It's gonna be a great trip.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us today. We will return.
We'll be back
We'll be back next week.
next week.
Maybe at 4 o'clock when we're normally supposed to do this. I had some obligations today, so I have to go do that. But thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or anything that you would like us to talk about or address on next week's episode, please leave it in the comments below. Make sure you give it a little smiley face or whatever you want to do. You can give the angry face. I'm okay with that. And share this. And again, this has been Beer with the Broker. I'm Matt Ward.
Joe Peffer, again, Barley Smokehouse.
Smokehouse.
You know, Lenny Collada, the owner here, he also started Common House Ales, which is a great new brand of Columbus Ales. So you should check those out too.
And my wife's calling me, and that'll do it for this episode. Thanks.
Thanks.